Good afternoon, guys. This is Philip Adams with the law offices of Philip Adams here in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I want to take some time this afternoon to talk to you guys about what I consider to be red flags to look for in Louisiana criminal cases for false accusations. Now, people often lie. This is just a simple reality of life, unfortunately. We've all been lied to by somebody at some point or another, many times. And throughout my time in defending people who have been charged with crimes in Louisiana, I have encountered many false accusation cases. Disappointingly, these false accusation cases are not uncovered by investigators in the beginning of the cases due to a failure to adequately investigate each case. This is often the main reason why. Investigators in a criminal case have a duty to investigate whether a crime occurred and B, determine whether an accuser is telling the truth. Investigators must faithfully adhere to the presumption of innocence and seek to determine if guilt can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And investigators should never just take someone's word at face value. After all, the job of a competent investigator doesn't end once an allegation is made, but rather is just beginning. To ensure that only the guilty are apprehended in a case, an investigator has a moral and professional duty, in my opinion, to remain impartial and unbiased when evaluating facts in a case. Considering the possibility that an accuser might not be telling the truth is one way to ensure that an investigator conducts an impartial investigation, and a competent one at that. Because the reality is that, unfortunately, not every accuser in a criminal case is telling the truth. Investigators should always look for red flags that indicate that an accuser is lying or distorting the truth. With that being said, let's talk about some potential red flags that we can look for if we're investigating a criminal case and we want to determine if someone is being truthful or not and making allegations. Number one is look for potential motive. Now, every person who brings a false accusation has a motivation to do so. While the existence of a possible motive to lie doesn't prove that a criminal allegation is false, a possible motive certainly provides ample reason to conduct further investigation to determine the truth or falsity of a criminal allegation. Number two, a history of mental illness. Many people with mental illnesses do not lie and bring false accusations. I want to be clear on that. However, mental illness can predispose a person to suffer from paranoia, to not be capable of distinguishing reality from fantasy, etc., and does lead to a false accusation. Sometimes complainants may even be psychotic or delusional and may make several different complaints that are often wildly implausible. Number three, a history of past false reporting. A person who has a history of bringing false reports is somebody who should be viewed with extreme skepticism by law enforcement officers when conducting an investigation. People who repeatedly bring false accusations lack a moral consciousness and tend to be highly manipulative. They can also present themselves as being highly believable. And to avoid being duped by a serial false accuser, police should always run a criminal background check on every accuser in a criminal case, and also run a check for all previous reports, complaints, and allegations brought by each accuser in every criminal case. While taking this extra step with each accuser will involve time and effort, the result will lead to fewer innocent people being victimized by serial false accusers. Number four, jealousy towards someone. Sometimes a false accuser is just jealous of somebody else and may seek to level the playing field by upending that other person's way of life. Maybe the other person got a great job promotion and makes more money, got married, and the accuser is alone, or is well liked by the community, but the accuser is not, and so on. The possibilities for jealousy are endless, and a flame of jealousy can lead to a false report and ruin somebody's life. Number five, a recent breakup in a relationship. This type of red flag is usually easier to spot than many other types of red flags. Often, when one person ends a relationship, the person dumped may get angry or jealous and seek to get revenge. When passion and emotions mix with jealousy or anger, they often produce a toxic brew that leads to a false accusation. These accusations especially arise in the context of one partner leaving for another partner. A simple way to guard against this type of false accusations is for law enforcement officers, to inquire about the relationship status of all accusers and witnesses. If during an investigation an officer learns, for instance, that the accuser was dumped by the alleged perpetrator, the officer should be vigilant about conducting a detailed investigation to ensure that an innocent person is not roped into the justice system. Number 6, a recent failure or humiliation. A person who brings false reports may have recently experienced a significant failure or humiliation, such as a job loss, an arrest, spurning by a lover, etc., and does seek to restore self-worth, triggering a psychological desire to get even with the person who initiated the failure or humiliation. Number 7, problems with finances. A person who is asset poor and or debt heavy may have a strong desire to bring a false accusation against someone, especially somebody who's of high income or status in society. This type of false accuser figures that if he or she can then obtain money from the alleged perpetrator through the threat of criminal prosecution, the filing of a civil complaint, and or media scrutiny, it may well be worth bringing that accusation just to see what happens. Number 8, drug, alcohol, gambling, etc. type of addictions. People who suffer from drug, alcohol, or gambling addiction, for example, are often so consumed by the addiction that they will usually stop at nothing to get high or get another fix. They figure that by bringing a false accusation, they might obtain money or some type of material gain from the person accused to further satisfy the addiction. Number 9, pressure. Pressured reporting by a partner, a family member, a friend, or a law enforcement officer is quite common, especially in cases that involve serious crimes like murders, rapes, molestations. Witnesses being questioned by law enforcement officers can often feel intense pressure to lay blame on somebody else in an effort to satisfy a coercive officer or an inquisitorial family member or friend. And one sign of pressure reporting that warrants further investigation is a witness who is initially reluctant to report an alleged crime, but then later reports under pressure. Often, these witnesses make reports to provide an explanation for illegal behavior that they have engaged in. For example, to explain lateness or staying out past a curfew, explain an absence, explain bad grades for some juvenile accusers, explain an STD or pregnancy, etc., to a partner that you're married to who's wanting to know how you got pregnant or got an STD. Well, in that latter example, if you were to accuse someone falsely of rape, that might be a potential cop-out in a sticky situation. Number 10, a desire for sympathy or empathy. Some people make false complaints to get attention or just sympathy from the public. They often desire attention or sympathy from friends, relatives, and or authority figures. These people usually have strong feelings of inadequacy and they crave concern and support. They may have tried other ways of getting attention in the past, like faking an illness, and been unsuccessful. They may then feel that by upping the ante, they are more likely to succeed in obtaining the sympathy that they seek. Number 11, inconsistencies and embellishments in retellings. Individuals who make false accusations often are unable to keep track of their own lies and the stories that they have previously told. When being subjected to repeated questioning, these individuals may tell different versions of the same story each time that they are asked. Often, the inconsistencies in retellings and embellishments are not minor, as normally occurs, but rather significant and internally contradictory. Number 12, exact retellings. Just as inconsistencies and embellishments and retellings can be indicative of false reporting, exact retellings can be too. If an alleged victim tells the same story multiple times in exactly the same way with the same details and evidence, these retellings may be indicative of a rehearsal. And why is that the case? Well, some minor variation in details is expected when recounting a story multiple times. So exact retelling is a red flag to watch for because it runs counter to how human psychology and memory recall generally operate. There should be consistency with respect to the substantive aspects of a story, with perhaps some variation on trivial details. Number 13, consistency with previously reported similar crimes. This red flag is similar to the red flag involving a desire for sympathy or empathy. Often, people with low self-worth may hear or read a crime complaint that previously occurred, say in the newspaper or in the media, and may then bring essentially the same accusation against somebody and parrot media accounts because they don't know real facts about a fake crime. Number 14, an inability to describe a suspect and or crime. An inability to give a description of one's alleged attacker and or give details about the alleged crime is a major red flag. Unless a victim was unconscious or mentally impaired, the accuser should be able to give some details about a suspect and a crime that actually occurred. Number 15, inconsistencies with other evidence in the case. If an accuser's account of an alleged crime is inconsistent with other evidence in the case, any inconsistency should be further investigated to determine if the inconsistency has a plausible explanation or is indicative of lying on the part of the accuser. For example, if an accuser says that she was vaginally raped by a certain man and he ejaculated inside her, but no sperm or DNA associated with that man is found inside the accuser by law enforcement officers, the accuser might be lying. Number 16, no witnesses or surveillance in the case, even though witnesses and surveillance should exist. If a witness reports having been victimized in a location where other people must have been present or surveillance was present, for example, inside a Walmart store in a heavily trafficked portion of the store, but no witnesses or surveillance can be found that corroborates the witness's story, then the witness may be lying. If a witness says that she was robbed, for example, at a specific location in a grocery store and during a specific time range, and investigators determined that a surveillance camera was indeed working and captured the location and duration of the alleged crime, but no crime was actually observed in the camera footage, then the witness has to be fabricating an allegation. Number 17, injury to oneself, crime staging, and planted evidence. Injury to oneself is often not apparent and can only be determined through the help of crime scene reconstruction and or medical science. The same principle is true for crime scene staging. Discovering planted evidence also raises a serious red flag that demands extreme caution when evaluating the entirety of a case. Often, if one charge in the case involves planted evidence, the other charges in the same case may also involve planted evidence that may not be readily apparent absent further investigation. Now, these are just some of the red flags that I think are important to look at when examining a case for a potential false accusation. Not every case involves a false accusation. Many cases can be backed by credible evidence. However, it's important for a competent attorney who's given leads or indications of a false accusation from the client or other witnesses to be vigilant in looking out for these red flags. Take care.